Welcome Downlander. In this new video I have just finished writing my script, and I have a few pages that I'm going to work from, and I'm actually going to keep on my glasses to make sure that I can read my own writing. You see a whole bunch of books here around me, and they all are about ritual. And some of these books are actually very interesting. This is, for instance, Agrippa von Nettesheim, 3 books of occult philosophy. I have this as a leftover from my studies on Western esoterics at the university as part of my studies in medicine and healthcare, my comparative PhD and master. I have all the other books. This is the Chinese government, about the history of Chinese educational thought. There is Ge Hong's work, there is all kind of other stuff here, and all these people, they write about ritual. And I always emphasize that exercise, like in Kung Fu exercise, when the Tai Chi Chuan and the Daoyin and the meditation and so on are not militarized, but they are really the art that it's supposed to be, then at that moment it is actually sort of a ritual. It is a ritual. It's a ritualization of particular kind of actions, a particular kind of intentions, and particular kind of feelings and personal ideas about reality that are going through a process through which you, at the end of the sequence of practice, have created a work of art. And it's not just a work of art, it is also a piece of philosophy, and it is also a scientific thing, a scientific feat that you have accomplished. And I want to talk a little bit more about that with you today. Exercise has always been an elementary aspect of self-cultivation in Chinese culture. And the reason for this is because they have this notion that if you are practicing something, you exercise yourself in trying to prevent having the wrong action. This is a very important aspect. You have to remember this because it is also a method that is nowadays very often used in modern sports. In the past, sports didn't exist, of course, but martial prowess was being practiced by slashing and hacking and so on, and deflecting. All these kind of things were being done, and they were being done with wood or with metal swords or with spears or anything like that. But it was done to create that kind of physical prowess to practice, to apply on the battlefield. While at the moment when you practice martial arts, it's more like a moral competitiveness between equals. And as a result of that, the intent of the practice is very different from fighting. Normally, they talk about Tai Chi Chuan, for instance, as being the emperor of all the martial arts, because the art aspect is so incredibly important in it. At the lowest level, you have to, of course, learn how to apply it into a fighting condition. But then you have to transcend that need to fight to be able to actually achieve that kind of art. On the long term, sure, your art will be so ingrained in your system that if somebody attacks you, you most likely will be able to deflect a lot of things, even without fighting a lot. You will be able to achieve something. Of course, with a professional fighter who can beat very hard, you might not have any real answer on that. And that is what you very often see when people challenge Tai Chi masters, is that they can deflect most things, but if somebody is really intent on hurting them, that is not in their mindset. It's not in their mindset to hurt you too. It is a conversation, and it's a conversation between you, them, and heaven, and earth. That's basically it. Yeah, that actually makes you think about the character of Ling. We get back to that later. When you pay attention to the way how children in China are being drilled from childhood onward in writing and reading, with the kind of sentences that they get, then you are very clear in understanding that they get admonishments on how to behave from the beginning. While in Western language, that is not the case. In Chinese culture, children are learning particular formulas of talk, behavior, and so on, to help them prevent problems with adults or with other children. And if they learn how to apply these properly, they will glide smoothly through life, and as a result of that, their life will be harmonious, and as a result of that, they will find a sort of happiness and contentness in their life, where they might not achieve a lot, but at least they will not be in conflict with their environment continuously. In the West, on the other hand, in our education, children are learning how to think for themselves and make their own decisions about how to behave, and there is very little to counteract their possible wrong responses on a situation because of their thoughts. And you see in our society, as a result of that kind of behavior, which is often imitated also in Asian countries, including China nowadays, you see that a lot of these children, they end up in a life full of conflict, disappointments, frustrations, and they maybe need medication, maybe they get onto drugs, maybe they get into a life of crime and violence, maybe they get into unhappy marriages or relationships. All kind of things happen to them, which make them seek for solutions. And some of them, they are maybe less violent, and they look for something like Tai Chi Chuan to learn to defend themselves or to become more in control of their internal anger or aggression or disappointment, or they go into all kind of bodily therapies to release the tensions in their body, and they do all kind of pseudo psychotic trainings with intense breathing or intense sports in the gym to release or to feel confirmed in their feelings. And in Chinese culture, that is all very different. As an adult, you're supposed to try to avoid conflicts. It doesn't mean that people don't have conflicts, because they do have. I've seen people explode on the street onto each other, husband, wife, friends, colleagues, bosses, staff. So all these kind of things, they do happen. But everybody is aware that there are particular circumstances where that can happen and where it cannot happen, or that it should not happen, even though it sometimes does happen. So there is always also a factor of shame on the error of behavior, which does not so much exist in the West. We are willing to accept our mistakes, where in China they see it as a moment where they have to learn to improve on themselves. That's called self-cultivation. That's a Confucian value, and we get to that because that is part of what you can say the ritualization of life. And the ritualization of life is then this solution to try to find a particular kind of harmony in life by avoiding conflict and by trying to smoothen yourself in the situations of life where you get into. When we talk about ritual in the West, I think it is a good idea I first point out the work of Agrippa von Nettesheim. Agrippa von Nettesheim is at the border between the Middle Ages and the more modern history, you can say. Agrippa von Nettesheim was a magician, and he wrote 3 major books, which are called the 3 books of occult philosophy. He was a little bit of a player, and there were a lot of scandals around him. But as a magician, he was a very deep thinker, and we can definitely say that our modern esoterics, to a large degree, goes back to what he was saying. When I was reading his work, when I was studying at the university to study the history of Western esoterics, I found a lot of aspects which authors in the West, they claim they come from the Arab world, but in the Arab world they claim that they come from either India or China. So there's a long history of aspects of thinking between cultures, which is traveling through the Silk Route and other ways between people. As we know, Chinese traders, they were trading all the way to Australia, and the coast of Africa, and Indian traders were doing the same. So there was a lot of trade all over the world and exchange as a result of that. Agrippa von Nettesheim, he saw ritual, and that is the topic for today, of course. He saw ritual in the context of sacrifice and offering. So he said that in life we make choices. He didn't say it like that, but you can summarize it as that. In life we make choices of sacrifice and of offering. In case we want something, we want to make sure that we get that in the right way, so we know that everything has a particular kind of price. And to get what we want, we offer something. And this offering can be a small thing, a gesture or a feeling or something. And as a result of that, we get into a communication with something. And that's something he considered to be the divine, in the sense that there's gods, demons, ghosts, and so forth involved. At the moment when it pains us to offer this is a sacrifice. In both cases, this is a ritualized action, and he said for ritualized action, usually performing the ritual 3 times should be sufficient to actually achieve the result of the operation that you are doing. So in that sense, a ritual he saw as a magical operation. He also said that this ritual action is in fact the nature of magic, and he talked about ritual in the sense of having a natural magic or natural ceremony, natural ritual, or you have a ceremonial magic or a ceremonial ritual. And these 2 things are different, because the natural ritual follows the highest order of the universe, while the ceremonial ritual follows a lower order. And we go discuss these kind of details. Magic, he says, works through repetitive actions. Operations are being repeated frequently because that is the way how magic works. In reality, everything works through repetition. By repetition, we mean that we make something into a habit. When we do an exercise, we can do an exercise wherever we want, but it doesn't mean that after doing it 1 time, we know exactly how to do this and create the kind of effect that we want to have. It takes time. My teacher, Liu, and also my teacher Shen, and also my teacher Yao Shen De, they all said that we Westerners, we are lazy students because we are not willing to study more than 1, 2 or 3 hours a day. And they said that a minimum of 10 to 12 hours is required, and best would be to practice 20 hours a day. And this is something that comes originally from Confucius. He says basically that somebody should cultivate 24 hours a day, so even the waking and the sleeping together, they should blend together into a constancy of cultivation. And for us Westerners, that is hard to understand. Confucius said you should live your life ritualized, as if you're always being spied upon and being gossiped about. He didn't say that literally like that, but this is basically what it means. That means that you have to continuously be aware that you could be seen and that people might talk about you, or that you might embarrass yourself. So even in the most private of moments, you should control your behavior through your self-cultivation. In Taoism also likewise, you should always stay with your attention in your dantian. You should always pay attention to the form of your body. You should always be busy with developing the Jing. So the Jing Gong is a very important practice for that, because at the moment when you can stand 8 hours in a particular posture, then at that moment of course it's easier to maintain your posture any time of the day under all kinds of circumstances. The reason why Agrippa called natural magic the highest order of things, using the highest order of things, is because it is using the inherent quality or the inherent virtue of everything. That is the De in Tao De, from Tao De Jing, and also from Lao Zun. He is the god of Tao De, which is very often translated as morality also. So that morality is very important because it's the way how you relate actions to your inherent qualities in Taoism. And Agrippa said something very similar. He said this is the highest natural order, and it might very well be that it originated from Chinese thinking, because it is so much time before Agrippa actually implemented it in his philosophy. At the moment when you do go in the opposite direction and you go towards the ceremonial part, the lower sciences, what Agrippa said is that this repetitive movement of this repetitive action is a way to get the universe moving. And he gives us an example that the ancient Persian kings, they first had to learn magic before they learned how to rule the world, because at the moment when they learn action, they learn already how to move things in the world. And this is very similar to what is being said in many Chinese sources, where they say, like Tao Te Ching also says that a great emperor or great king is not known by the people because his actions automatically make everybody resonate with him, so that the world is getting in order just because of his proper actions. And Agrippa says something very similar, in the sense that by learning magic first, the Persian kings learned how to order the world, and as a result of that learned how law and regulation and governance work. Then when you talk about ceremonial magic, Agrippa said this is related more towards the lower order of nature, because you are imitating nature, while in fact in natural magic, in natural ritual, you are following magic. That is different. You have to think about that. And if you understand it, write it in the subtext below in the notes, so that other people can see that you understand it too. Or you can just tell it to me privately. One thing that we can notice on his saying is that to him ritual and magic is basically the same. There's no real difference between these two things. And we can also say that magical operation and ritual operation both therefore also are reliant on repetition, and therefore are a aspect of calculus. Calculus plays a large role in there, and we can say that mathematics in that sense is in fact a magical operation of reality. We try to shape things in a particular way because of the way how we calculate and how we at a certain moment take control over nature. So a lot of our modern science actually is a magical operation within that view, and the way how we manifest it through the things that we make actually is the manifestation of that magic. Your computer in that sense is a tool that does a lot of the magic for you. It can calculate things for you, and modern AI is also similar like that. But there is a but, and we're going to talk about that but too. Because the problem with calculus is that it very easily becomes mechanical. And therefore, we can say it is an imitation of nature, it is not natural. And in that sense, the effect of calculus is not as good. Like for instance, when you exercise, many manuals will say exercise this 3 times or 9 times or 18 times or 81 times. But what they actually mean is exercise until you get it at that moment. and then drive it a little bit further so that you get a little bit more, and every time you can come to that part. And here I have to point out the work of which one was that again? The Civilized Body by Peter E.S.Freud. He talks about the management of the body, that the body as an organic whole should come to understand itself to find healing. So if we and the body do not merge together, then healing cannot take place. And that means that the mechanical operation by taking medicines or by taking herbs, and it's the same process, in that sense does not really work for your healing process. He follows the ideas of George Breard on the psychosomatic nature of illness, and Breard has explained in the 1970s that the problem for our modern society is the way how we look at time. He calls time as we use it the tyranny of time, because we impose a military discipline on time, and therefore we don't experience time but we calculate time. That means that because of this calculation we take ourselves further away from the divine nature of reality. And you see that in Chinese culture, in Tibetan culture, in Japanese culture traditionally, and many other cultures over the world. When they look at time, they talk about the time required to experience something and come to an understanding. In Tibetan it is called bardo, very, very famous word, one of the first times that I came across this word, and this kind of meaning of time anyway, the first time I came across it, because I was always assuming that clock time was the measurement of time as it is, but in fact then, according to Breard, clock time is actually what is imposed upon us, and it brings us away from experiencing reality as it is. Therefore, when you're exercising, you're not supposed to exercise just half hour. The half hour is a guarantee that you have exercised, but you should exercise to the point where you understand it. So that is what is very important. Of course, you can fool yourself by saying like, oh, now I understand it, but that is not the reality of things. For instance, dealing with your pets. That is something that you gradually learn and you get better at it over time, so that your pet knows exactly what to come and get with you. Because they do that too, they ritualize too. They greet you in a particular way, they welcome you in a particular way, they wait for you in a particular way. This is all standardized. So you can say that human and animal behavior in that sense is ritualized in its most natural form. And at the moment when we take what we presume to be freedom to do whatever we want, we actually create conflict and chaos, and we disorder our life so that we get out of harmony with the natural order of things.
Unfortunately, this is already the end of part 1. There was almost 40 minutes of video material, I thought, but it's actually 50 or 55. So we will go on in the next program. If you want, if you like, I hope you will support us by joining the channel and signing up to watch for the second movie. You can also join our Patreon, or you can follow courses with us on SamCard.